Hey church, Pastor Shane here, another community group discussion starter video. We continued in our series called Spiritual Nourishment, the Unforced Rhythms of Grace, where we are talking about spiritual disciplines, things and rhythms that we build into our lives that help us focus our minds and our hearts on who God is and what He's done for us, to kind of develop those rhythms that nourish us spiritually so we can be the people that God has called us to be. This week, Skylar focused on Sabbath or rest. And he started with the fact that Sabbath is something that is needed, that rest is required to kind of recover, to make up for what we kind of expend through our work. That God created work and it was good, but God also created rest. It's right there in the creation story that God rested on the seventh day, and that was kind of placed on the humans, this need for rest. It was expressed in the Old Testament law through the Sabbath law of the Old Testament for the Israelites to make sure they rested from their labor. Even Jesus, when he came down to earth, being fully God and fully man, he rested, and he had his disciples rest because they needed it. He would sometimes go off to a quiet place and pray. It would say he would stop and rest. And actually, you're going to talk a little bit about that as part of one of your questions is in the sermon discussion guide today. But rest is more than just kind of making up for just expending our energy and just needing to recover, which we all need sometimes and all need to do. That the rest that God calls us to is to spend some time pausing from the busyness of life, pausing from all of our work to focus on Him. And so we're thinking of providing time for us to rest. Yes, there's time. It's good. Go watch a movie, go watch a sports, go just chill out and rest from your work. But also make sure that either part of your rest or that you're building in a time of rest or Sabbath where you're focusing on God, because rest builds our relationship with God. If we could pause from life and think about God for a day. Again, the Old Testament's a great example of this. You look at all the Old Testament festivals, which had a lot of rest built in. You think about the Sabbath day, which would be the day they would be opening the Torah and reading it together, at least in the days of the synagogue. It was a time to focus on God and reconnect with Him, to make sure that we don't get lost in the busyness of life and forget to focus on God. And so I hope you find some opportunities to rest. Like, what does rest look like for you? This is something you should be talking about in your group. Have you built in that rest? Have you not built in that rest? What would it look like for you to build in that rest? What would be the thing that would allow you to pause for a moment and build your relationship with God? To pause for a moment and rest from work. To pause for a moment to recover so we don't get lost in the busyness of life. And we're making sure God remains our priority for all the rest of the times when we are so busy, working hard, doing the things that God has called us to do. I hope you have a great discussion.